This video contains detailed descriptions of forensic investigations and graphic content related to violent crimes. Viewer discretion is advised.
In an upscale New York suburb, in September 1999, a homeowner makes a chilling discovery: an old rusted drum hidden in a crawl space.
This is a police picture of the barrel. Not knowing what was inside, the homeowner along with the realtor finally opened the barrel, horrified at what they saw.
Inside lies a dark secret, buried for decades, that someone had hoped would stay, hidden forever. "30 miles east of New York City lies the town of Jericho, located on the north shore of Long Island. In September 1999, Ron Cohen, who had been a resident for 10 years, decided it was finally time to sell his home as his children were getting older. It was moving day for the Cohen family, and before leaving that day, Ronald Cohen noticed that the sanitation workers hadn't picked up all of his trash. A note on a 55-gallon drum said it wasn't collected due to its heaviness. This drum had been stored in a crawl space in Cohen's home since he moved in 9 years earlier, so he was unaware of what was inside. When Cohen finally opened it, he was met with a foul odor. Inside, he saw what looked like a hand and a woman's shoe. Local authorities took the container to the Nassau County morgue, where its contents were examined. They discovered the preserved remains of a young woman. At the bottom of the container were also some plastic pellets, a green plastic flower stem with leaves, and a woman's pocketbook, all submerged in a strange brownish-green liquid. The liquid had badly damaged the pocketbook's contents, which could have helped identify the woman.
What was most noteworthy to the body and the cause of death were that there were 10 different injuries called lacerations to the back and upper part of her head. There were multiple fractures to the skull. In some areas, the skull was broken into small pieces. There also was blood staining to these areas of injuries, indicating that they occurred while she was alive.
But who was this murdered woman? The medical examiner identified her as likely Caucasian or Hispanic, between 20 and 30 years old. She was about 5 feet tall and had some distinctive dental work done.
It didn't appear to be dental work that was performed in the United States. It led me to believe that it was from a South American country.
When Dr. Catanese examined the X-ray, he found something surprising: a 17-inch fetus, almost full term. 3 pieces of jewelry were also recovered: 2 rings and a necklace engraved with "To Patrice" and "Love, Uncle Phil." The initial clue came from the drum itself. Multiple encrypted numbers were found on it, including one similar to a fingerprint. The investigation led to a chemical company in Linden, New Jersey. Company records revealed that the container was manufactured in 1965. It appears now, 34 years later, as an improvised coffin. A 55-gallon steel drum found in the crawl space of a New York City suburb uncovered startling evidence of a crime. The current owner said it had been there since he moved in 1990. The previous owner had reported the same, noting he never opened the drum due to the chemical labels on it. Inside the drum, a woman's purse was discovered at the bottom, submerged in liquid. The purse contained papers and an address book, but the liquid had deteriorated the pages to near fragility. All of these were sent to a forensic document specialist for further analysis.
It was so heavily and thickly encrusted with a brownish-yellow slime. It was like a jelly-like substance, and it coated everything. And when I touched the evidence with my gloves on, I could see it just came right off of my hands.
To remove the moisture, the items were placed in a forensic drying cabinet for a few days. After drying, they could be examined using a video spectral comparator, or VSC. This tool uses a range of infrared light sources and advanced digital technology to reveal writing not visible to the naked eye. The VSC can detect changes to documents by observing how different ink types respond to infrared light. However, after extensive work with infrared camera filters, the document examiner was able to identify certain names and addresses in the address book.
As I put it under the machine and tried the various filters and lights, some names and phone numbers and addresses started to come up in the book. It was actually quite amazing to see writing appear from within the pages of this book that had been submerged in these fluids for 30 some odd years.
However, the information in the address book was 30 years old. When investigators contacted the phone numbers, they found that the individuals had long since relocated. Facing what seemed like a dead end, the investigators shifted their focus to the family that owned the house in the 1960s when the steel drum was manufactured. At that time, the owner was a man named Howard Elkins, who was now retired and living in Boca Raton, Florida.
And we have people in the neighborhood who are long-term residents say, yeah, he was involved in some plastics company in Manhattan.
The discovery of plastic leaf fragments and pellets in the drum with the victim raised concerns. Howard Elkins was a part owner of Manhattan's Melrose Plastic Company in the 1960s, a company known for producing and manufacturing plastic plants. As investigators prepared to interview Howard Elkins in Florida, the address book from the drum began to reveal more names and details. The clues were starting to come together in the search for the identity of the pregnant woman found in the steel drum. The serial numbers on the drum led investigators to a chemical company in New Jersey.
I went there with a detective from our lab who has some knowledge of chemicals. We went there and we showed them the pellets and we showed them the green material. Showed them pictures of the barrel.
The green liquid at the bottom of the drum was identified by the chemical company as a halogen green dye used to color the bases of plastic flowers and trees. However, it hadn't been produced since 1971. The pellets found in the drum were used to make plastic leaves and flowers similar to those found with the body. Following a local newspaper story about the unidentified woman in the steel drum, someone contacted the Nassau County Police.
He tells us about the drum, where it comes from. He tells us that was the chemicals that they used when they were mixing the bases for these artificial trees. So he puts all this together. He puts everything in perspective for us.
The caller didn't know the identity of the deceased woman, but revealed that Howard Elkins had been involved in an affair with a Hispanic woman who worked at his plastic factory in the 1960s.
So we now have things to talk to him about other than the fact that there was a barrel found under his house.
Police traveled to Boca Raton, Florida, to speak with Howard Elkins, but he was uncooperative.
Did you ever use this type of a barrel in your business? No, we never had any barrels like that. He lied to us. We knew he was lying to us within 5 minutes of the interview.
I asked him at one point, did you ever have an affair while you were working there? And he kind of surprised us, and he said yes.
But then we went into, what was her name? I don't know. Can you describe her? It was 30 years ago. I said, you can't even describe her. Was she tall? Was she short? Was she fat? Was she skinny? Was she Spanish? I don't remember.
After about 20 minutes of this, I had removed from my briefcase a kit, and I asked him if he would give me permission for me to take a swab from the inside of his mouth for DNA purposes, to see if he in fact was the father of that baby. He told us no. He said he didn't think he would allow that.
The interview was interrupted by a phone call from Elkins' wife. Elkins then asked the police to leave, insisting he needed to speak with her privately.
After he asked us to leave, we told him that we would. I said that there was not a doubt in our mind that he was involved in this. And I stood up and I stood right in front of him and I said, we're going to leave now, Mr. Elkins. But I'm going to get a court order. I'm going to come back with that court order, and I'm going to take your blood, and I'm going to match your blood up to the dead baby and that dead girl, and I'm going to come back here and arrest you for murder and put you in jail for the rest of your life. He nodded his head, and he opened the door and asked us to leave.
As the police went to obtain a court order, Howard Elkins went shopping, purchasing a shotgun and ammunition. He was later found in a neighbor's garage by the police and his son, with a shotgun nearby and a fatal head injury. The 70-year-old retired plastics executive left no final note of explanation. Investigators collected a blood sample from Elkins after his death and sent it to LabCorp in North Carolina for DNA testing.
When we're testing for paternity, we look for shared DNA bands between the child or the fetus and the alleged father.
The case involving the fetus found in the drum faced significant challenges. After 30 years, the tissue samples were severely degraded. However, scientists managed to amplify the remaining DNA and perform analyses using a technique called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR.
At every region of the DNA that we tested, the fetus and Mr. Elkins have a band in common. Mr. Elkins could not be excluded with a 99.93% probability of paternity.
Although the crime was resolved, the identity of the woman in the drum remained unknown. The small address book, submerged in the green liquid at the bottom of the drum, was finally revealing its secrets. Thanks to modern forensic technology, the once blank pages, filled with 30-year-old information, could now be deciphered.
Kept looking through the book, and on this page, on the second line, I found the name Mr. Elkins and the address in Manhattan with a phone number.
On another page, the words Residencia Nombre, a resident alien number, were faintly visible, along with a telephone number and address for someone named Kathy Andrade. Police were surprised to discover that she was still living in the same apartment with the same phone number after 30 years. Immediately, Kathy Andrade recognized the pregnant young woman in the drum. She was a student in her English class named Reyna Marroquin, originally from El Salvador.
This lady almost immediately went to tears. She told us that she knew Angelica Marroquin, that she was one of the more lovely people that she ever knew, and that she disappeared 30 years ago.
Kathy Andrade had no knowledge of what had happened to her friend Reyna Marroquin, though she had been concerned that Reyna might have been the victim of foul play.
And I was in shock, and I said, oh my God, you know, it's hard to believe that these things can happen.
Reyna Marroquin moved to the United States in 1966 and lived in a modest room at a Catholic home for single women. She attended classes at the High School of Fashion Industries and worked at Melrose Plastic Company, which specialized in artificial flowers.
She had a beautiful personality. She always talked about her family, and she was in touch with her family, how much she loved New York, and her dream was to become an American citizen.
Before her disappearance, Reyna had told Kathy she was pregnant, but did not reveal the father's identity.
Is he going to marry you? She said, eventually he will marry me. I never asked who, because she never said who he was.
Reyna also told Kathy that her boyfriend was already married and had 3 children. She was beginning to question whether he intended to leave his family to marry her.
So she got very angry. She called the house, and who answered the phone was his wife. And she told his wife that she was expecting a baby from her husband. Then he called her back, and he says, I am going to kill you. I will never forgive you. She was crying. She was terrified. She said, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. I said, why do you? She says, I don't know. I just made a stupid mistake.
When Kathy Andrade went to Reyna's apartment, she found the door open but could not find any sign of Reyna.
And I waited for about 3 hours. When nobody returned, the phone never rang or anything, I got scared. I walked into the police station and I spoke to the officer. And he says, are you a relative of the young lady? I said, no, I'm only a friend. And I said, but she's pregnant, she's about to have a baby. Oh, she said, you know, she probably went shopping.
Since Kathy Andrade did not know the identity of Reyna's partner, there was little else she could provide to the police.
About Reyna, honestly, I feel sorry, because there was a future for her. You know, she paid very dear for that mistake.
The police believe that Howard Elkins lured Reyna to the factory one night after she revealed their affair to his wife and then assaulted her to death. He transported the body to his home on Long Island, planning to dispose of it in the ocean using his boat. Elkins placed the body in a steel drum from work and added plastic pellets to increase its weight so it would sink. However, he misjudged the drum's weight after sealing it. At 350 pounds, it was too heavy for him to manage on his boat. With no other options, he pushed it into a crawl space in his house, where it remained undisturbed for 34 years under several different owners.
And for 30 years, she spent in the barrel while Howard Elkins raised his family and had his children go to school and led whatever, as normal a life as you can, you know, waiting for that other shoe to drop.
The secret of Howard Elkins and Reyna Angelica Marroquin might never have been revealed if the sanitation workers had not picked up the drum. Oscar Corral wrote the story for today. He traveled to El Salvador to find Reyna's family and located Reyna Marroquin's 95-year-old mother in San Martin, a small village outside of San Salvador.
She came out to the front of the house where there was a porch, and I said to her, "I'm a reporter from Newsday, New York." I told her that police had discovered a woman who had been murdered 30 years ago. And when she saw her daughter's picture, she almost fainted. She had to lean on somebody who was carrying her. Her face fell. She immediately began to weep. It had been 30 years that this woman waited for an answer. She told me she had dreams about her daughter for 30 years. She told me she had a dream even that her daughter was in a barrel that haunted her for so long.
When Reyna Marroquin discovered that her husband had a mistress who was pregnant with his child, she left El Salvador. After moving to New York City, she found herself in a similar situation, this time as the pregnant woman caught in a tragic love triangle.
So she was on both sides of the fence in this case, and in the end it cost her her life.
Inside the drum containing Reyna Marroquin and her unborn child, investigators found a note on a blank piece of paper. It is believed that Reyna wrote it to Howard Elkins. The message read,
"Don't be mad. I told the truth."
In October 1999, the remains of Reyna Marroquin and her unborn child were returned to El Salvador. After 30 years, they finally received a proper burial. They were laid to rest together in the Marroquin cemetery next to Reyna's mother, who passed away a month later.